Now, last week we looked at the connection between and among the tabernacle in the wilderness, the temple, the cross, and the rose cross. There were outstanding issues, and indeed we need to touch them out. But today we are focusing more on how the tabernacle in the wilderness foreshadows the cross. That is critical. And as we had outstanding issues last week, it is my hope that today we will reach an agreement regarding the outline or the layout of the tabernacle as compared to the layout of the cross. Let me also say that the tabernacle in the wilderness was given at a time that humanity just had the mind and was growing up to appreciate very, very important things about spirituality. But because our minds were not mature enough to develop the most important thing for now, which is conscience. Without the mind, it will be difficult to develop conscience, because we ourselves are gods in the making, and it is conscience that will actually tell us what's right and what is wrong. And depending on how we exercise our free will, we choose to do right or we choose to do wrong. So, for today, we are going to be talking about how the tabernacle in the wilderness foreshadows the cross, which means that the tabernacle in the wilderness is different from the cross, but there are some linkages between them. Now, let us also remember that when the mind was given, it coalesced with the lower desire body, and it became necessary to teach humanity how to live that life that will liberate the mind from the entanglements of the desired body, the lower one. So the tabernacle was to do certain things. It wasn't just given, but there is a reason for it, a purpose for it. One, obedience to the law and external guides, those who were leading us, how we should learn to obey them. And those external guides, we know them as the family spirits, the angels, the archangels, and so on. So the first thing is to compel us, to compel humanity to be obedient to external entities. I've talked about this one already, which is the second. How we should subdue the lower desires. That is the second objective. The third is to develop conscience in us. And the fourth, to now develop the spiritual bodies. Because we have no option but to develop the spiritual body. But when it comes to the tabernacle in the wilderness, a lot of it is involuntary. The traditional one, a lot of it was involuntary. But we need not remain involuntary. We need to go voluntary. The rituals are externally driven. So when you go to the tabernacle in the wilderness, the rituals that are performed there, they are externally driven to please an external God. That is the first thing, to please an external God, which invariably has reflective effect, cascading effect on the one who is doing that. So it's not that the high priest or the priest is only serving an external God, but the high priest is also developing out of obedience and performing rituals to an external God. These are some of the key functions of the tabernacle in the wilderness. Now, let's see. What the layout is. And this is by myself, I didn't write it. The tabernacle was designed by Jehovah God. God Jehovah designed that for humanity. It is a representation of things heavenly and spiritual, such as should be full of instruction to the candidate for initiation. And we know the basic principle underlying initiation is to come out consciously of the body and you can re-enter. So that particular model was put right there in the tabernacle in the wilderness. So the court of the tabernacle was an enclosure which surrounded the tabernacle. Its length, and this is where the issue is, where we are having our differences last Sunday. Its length is twice its width. The length of the tabernacle is twice its width. And when we are talking about length, it is how long something is it not so? If it is how long something is, we can't do it this way. Then we are talking about height. We can only do it this way. Or alive.
You can do it
we can do it the way we said last time, because you are using the place service.
I want us to get it well. If we are talking about length, what is a height? Please, we are talking about length, and we are talking about height. Length, I know it to be this way. Height, I know it to be this way. That is what I know. Its length was twice its width, and the gate was at the east end to follow the direction of the rising sun and the movement of the spiritual force that drives the earth planet and humanity. That is it. The physical layout clearly shows the cross. The physical layout clearly shows the cross, but rather in a horizontal position. That is how the layout looks like. Rather in a horizontal position. Now let's go. The arrangement of items in the tabernacle. The brazen altar was placed just aside the eating gate and it was used for the sacrifice of animals during the service. The altar was made of brass, a metal not found in nature, but made by man from copper and zinc. Thus, it is symbolically shown that sin was not originally contemplated in our scheme of evolution and is an anomaly in nature, as well as the consequences which are pain and death. They are symbolized by the sacrificial victims. Relating it to the cross, the individual is encouraged, is advised to feel that suffering, that pain, and sacrifice himself. That as the animals were sacrificed for the wrong things that we do. It doesn't mean we should kill ourselves, no. But the intensity of the pain not to repeat the wrong is what is being talked about here. And that is about sacrificing yourself, this time not the animal. The brazen laver was a large basin which was always kept full of water. It appears from the memory of nature, however, that these animals were not oxen but symbolical representations of the 12 signs of the zodiac. Humanity was at that time divided into 12 groups, one group for each zodiacal sign. Each symbolic animal attracted a particular ray. And as the holy water used today in the Catholic churches is magnetized by the priest during the ceremony using holy water, so also the hierarchies who were in charge of humanity those days magnetize the water so that they can have influence over us. Whatever they say we should do, there will be no opposition to it. Now, and I say again, relative to the cross, the individual must sanctify himself. So the brazen altar, we need to sanctify ourselves, clean ourselves in thoughts, in words, in actions, in desires. We need to sanctify ourselves, make ourselves clean. It may not be 100% at that stage, but at least there is some movement upward in taking out the ills in one's thoughts, in one's words, and others. And in that extent, we prepare ourselves towards the temple, the higher life. And in that regard, no alcohol is encouraged. The one who is sanctifying himself doesn't have to poison the body with such things. So alcoholism is not needed at all. No drugs. Control of the sex force, that is key. And importantly, adopting a vegetarian diet. So if you have that understanding and appreciation, as you're moving towards the East Room, you are taking those things out of your everyday life. How about the East Room? Having mounted the first steps upon the path, the aspirant stands in front of the veil, which hangs before the mystic temple. Drawing this aside, he enters into the East Room of the sanctuary, which was called the Holy Place. No window or opening of any sort was provided in the tabernacle to let in light. The East Room was never dark. Night and day, it was brightly illuminated by burning lamps. Each furniture, and this is key, because it connects with the cross. Each furniture was symbolical of the methods. We're talking about the methods, the ways that we can achieve, the methods whereby the aspirant, the one who has some spiritual awakening, the one who is striving to lead the spiritual life, that furniture in the tabernacle, in the wilderness, shows the methods whereby the aspirant may make soul growth through service. That is it. So if we are not growing enough spiritually, it is because we are not doing enough service. So if we have this knowledge that the furniture in the each room, the altar of incense, the table of showbread, and the holy candlestick, they indicate how we can build the soul body. And the way to doing that is service. How about conscience? The development of conscience, differentiating between what is right and wrong, and living by the high ideals, is key to preparing oneself towards the West Room. It is not only developing it in the East Room, but we are developing it as well towards the West Room. The mind should control all the various bodies that we have. We should be able to use the mind to control them, so that we don't live by only our desires. The purpose for which the mind was given humanity is to use it to control the various bodies. And by using it to control the various bodies, humanity will be able to extract what feeds the soul, the intellectual soul, the conscious soul, and the third one, you know it already. How the West Room? It is where the Ark of the Covenant resides. This place was an awful abode of God's presence, the special dwelling place of the Shekinah, the Ark of the Covenant. It was a hollow spectacle, also receptacle, not spectacle, receptacle, containing three very important things: the golden pot of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the law. This, more or less, is the Seddoh Bokor, where the aspirant who is striving to achieve has accumulated enough atoms and inches, because the soul body is made up of inches and atoms, and it is the density of it which prepares you and sets you up for initiation. Once the density of it is weak, there is no way you can be initiated the right way. So Peter, use your phone. It has a lot of magic. That's a lot of magic. Let's move to the palace. Overall, there were 3 curtains in the tabernacle in the wilderness, including the court. There were 3 curtains. One at the gate to the court, the other before the eastern gate, and then the one before the western one. And all of them were colored blue, scarlet, purple, with fine twine linen, which show us at once the status of this tabernacle in the wilderness. The presence of Christ was not or has not arrived at that time. So you don't find a golden color among the colors. It does not mean that humanity was not having initiation. Those early days when there was the tabernacle in the wilderness, it does not mean that humanity was not having initiation. We were having it, except it was more of involuntary, the old tradition, the Old Testament. How about Christ? The cross is upright. Here, the letter says, the cross is upright and depicts, it shows the struggle of the individual to break away from the control of involuntary to voluntary initiation. The individual who goes by the cross is moving away from the old tradition to the new tradition, and then it is upright. To break away from external spiritual influence to self-development or self-dependence. As we said last week, the cross refers to the human body that the spirit would have to use, and it is using to liquidate its death, and also to build the soul body for initiation. That is what the cross represents. God, the Jehovah's covenant with the pioneers of humanity through Moses is built on the law. The old tradition is built on the law, but the law alone doesn't make you build the soul body. The law alone doesn't restore humanity back to the Esoteric being conscious. No. But the one that Christ has with us, the second one, is built on love, and that is the New Testament. To follow Christ, humanity must first follow the law. You cannot build the soul body if you disregard the law. It's impossible. And we are talking about the 10 commandments. The advent of Christ is to prepare mankind towards overcoming of death. That is it. For us to regain what we lost some years back, the coming is to help us to overcome death. This is the restoration back into the eternal region where humanity, those who build the soul body, can be with Christ. The building of the soul body is depicted in the tabernacle of the wilderness by the body pot of manna, and the soul power that comes with it by Aaron's staff, that body, implying the development of the latent spiritual faculties into active and dynamic centers and working in harmony with nature forces. Not to overcome nature forces, but to work in harmony with them. It is only when the Solomon's temple, and Solomon's temple also refers to the golden wedding garment. It is when that is finally built, when we have attained the highest level that is to be attained. That is when in the tabernacle of the wilderness it is said the 2 staves in the ark can now be removed, where we will go through no rebirth. Rebirth will come to an end. To conclude, may we master the spiritual meaning of the symbolic tabernacle in the wilderness, striving each day to identify the opportunities around us and put ourselves wholeheartedly in helping others. This is how we can increase the density of the eaters to build the soul body and eventually attain positive initiation. Positive initiation, to separate the other forms of initiation people are talking about, where they go through some public ceremony and they say they are initiated. No, initiation goes beyond that. That is how we can bear living testimony of how the tabernacle in the wilderness foreshadows the cross. So what we have gone through in terms of this lecture is to have some inkling, some appreciation of the theoretical aspect. For us to experience it, we need to live that life to that day when initiation takes place, because we have all built the soul body. Thank you very much. Now I await your questions. We have 37 minutes for questions and answers. Any questions? And young man, I know you somehow came a bit later, but you can still put in some questions. Yes, for life I can see. I can see you. Yes, in terms of your question. I can see you. I mean, I have your question. Because I have a question for you. May I put my question out? Yes, my question.
During the involution period, why were we supposed to live our lives to please those who were helping us?
Yeah. Why were we to please them? That's the way we live our life. You know, it's like when we begin schooling, from day nursery on to kindergarten and all that. More or less, the child has no will to exercise, because we are leading the child for a good cause. We are leading the child for a good cause, so that by the time they get to stage 2, stage 3, all the way to junior high school, then they are becoming more independent. It is for a good cause. But because we do not have the strength, the capacity to do it from the very start, that is why we were doing that. But actually, in truth, we were not leading them. They were leading us to be ourselves. But because they also derive some benefit from helping us, that is why we can put it that we live to please them in those olden days. We never had the will to be self-dependent, because we don't even know what is right, what is wrong. Those only days. They were even building the bodies those days.
You said it did not benefit. What benefit did you have?
What benefit today? Or they also increase. The whole issue of the universe, the whole issue of spiritual development, even physical development is towards spiral movement upwards, which is endless. Some years back, we imagine, were we even having any television? We were not. But when we started developing the idea to invent something like television, look at the good form it was those days. Now look at what you have today. It is same thing with nature. So they also derive benefit by growing towards a higher level. We know that when beings have so perfected themselves, like let's say those on the sun, a time will come when they will also have the opportunity to have their own creation within the absolute. And we, human beings, will also have the opportunity to move beyond this physical and move to the etheric region. So you can see that there is always upward spiral movement. That is how it is. So they also gain by increasing. Except those who don't do anything. The evil ones, they retrogress, because they are doing the opposite. So they retrogress. They don't just stand still. You either move forward or you go back. That is it. But even though when they go back, a time will come, they will have to come back and continue from where they left off. So everything is movement. Movement from the physical into the invisible, into the absolute. Then at another time, everything emerges again, but not from the same level, but from a higher level. Yes, right.
What is the connection? You find the connection between the four items that you mentioned. The connection is four, the temple, four of them. So the purpose was to find out the connection between the four. So what is the connection?
That is last week. last week we looked at the 4, but today we are looking at only 2.
Yes, I'll come to this. But you wanted to establish the connection. So already include it. I mean, the summary week.
The connection lies in this initiation. All of them. That is what they need to. Because it is only that can restore us back to the etheric region consciously. Because we fell in the etheric region. Humanity fell in the etheric region. And we need to go back first to the etheric region. That is why Christ came. So that can be restored for humanity to get back to the etheric region. And then move on from there. So the job of humanity is to get back consciously to the etheric region. Through what? Initiation. So all of them are leading to that. But I don't want to know the interpretation of those symbols. I wish one day I'll have another lecture on the interpretation of those symbols. Today I'm not doing the interpretation of the symbols. But in case somebody has an answer to it, why not? Okay. Yes, tell me.
Yeah, my question is tabernacle in the wilderness. Tabernacle means tent. And a tent in the wilderness. What relation? You said that it foreshadows the cross.
It foreshadows
The cross. So what is the cross and the tent and the cross?
What is the tent and the
what is the cross?
Okay.
So that this one foreshadows this.
Okay. If we want to do one-to-one connection, we might not get it. Let's look at it, the substance of it. Of course, those days, how many cathedrals do we have and all that? But we were able to have a tent, the color. But the tabernacle goes beyond just the tent. Where God really dwells is what we are talking about. Not the tent, but that one is not, it's good, it is part of it. But that is not really what we are talking about. The human brain. And the brain is here. The critical thing for a human body or for a human being to function comes from that, the brain. And that's where we give an example. So, the outer appearance is just to give a structure for people to go and worship. The shadow of it. But the substance of it, the substance of the tent, lies in the east room and the furniture in there and the west room. That is the substance of the tent. What is hidden in the tent, which is the God we're talking about. So when you move and you come here, and there is a table. We have over here, we have over here, we have over here. These three things which are symbolic. I'm taking it that this is the east room. And when you now cross over, because when you now cross over to this place, that is where it is. But the body that is housing it in terms of the country and that one, if I tell you that I know what the tent means, that one I'm a liar. But the cross reveals itself in this arrangement. And the cross now reveals itself in this arrangement as it is for now. So this is the connection of the substance of the tabernacle in the wilderness and our cross.
So what is the substance to the cross?
We mentioned it, that the cross, we have it as understood by different people. And lastly, when I talk about the context within which I use the cross, I said in the human body, which contains the spirit, which the spirit is using to liquidate, is runs in the past and the present in order to build the soul body. That is how I look at the cross. So, if you connect it with Christ and how we are to develop the various settings, but especially where we are paid, exactly that is how it fits into it. The 2 palms, the feet, the head, it gives you straight away the cross. So that is the connection. I like the tabernacle of the lives.
Yes, so can I say that the tabernacle is a temporal dwelling place? The temporal dwelling place. The cross too is also a temporal dwelling place.
There's a difference. Now, in the tabernacle in the wilderness, what is happening here? You are looking at the God outside. Your initiation and all that is looking at the God outside. The cross tells you the God within. You must develop that. I hope we are getting the differences. The tabernacle in the wilderness prepares you towards worshiping a God outside, which is a good thing. Because as you are worshiping God outside, you are having effect on yourself. That's why the Lord came. But when it comes to the cross, you are not looking to any God outside. Though there is God outside, but the emphasis is on you yourself, the individual.
Okay, you say that is in the east room compared to what is the west room. Anybody, Richard wants to show you something there. The east room is actually where we have the showbread, the candlelight, and then we also have the altar of incense. Those are the three things over there.
But they are symbolic. They are symbolic for the one who's aspiring to developing the soul body. This is talking about the opportunities that come and how do you use them to serve others. You see, that's why the principal teaching of our Lord Jesus Christ focus on God first and then your neighbor. Those are the two critical things. Unlike the tabernacle in the wilderness, that wasn't the focus. There you can run somebody, but when you run somebody, bring the best that you have to pacify God. Some people say, after I can do anything, then I'll just take my business away. But here in the New Testament, no, because you continue to feel the pain yourself. Now, nothing happens by chance. It is age that we are moving. So, how come some people serve as the priests? Even the high priest in those old days, but not just anybody. There is some work that was done by individuals, and collectively they find themselves at a certain place at a point in time. None of us is here by chance. It is same thing with those who bear the net, those who are working to developing that soul body. It is work that must be done by each and every one of us. Because the message is all over. But some people had it first before others. Based on the way that they did, not only physically, but also spiritually. In the spiritual world, that's why we do everything. In the spiritual world, that is where the real work is. Here, we only come to practice it some more, add something some more, and go back and continue from there. So, the chosen ones are those who have worked on themselves, so that they can qualify themselves to be ahead of others, not to love over them, but to also help them to come. That is the chosen one. Hebrews chapter 9. Everything comes back to the same thing, which is conscience. Everything comes to the same thing, conscience. If you are able to decipher the right from the wrong, and you stick to the right, it means you have some principles to guide you. And it's that conscience that will lift you up. That is what the pioneers are. And even today, you can see that the conscience for some people is higher than others. For those who now have the message, those who now have the message, and others will have it in time, that our job is to build the soul body so that we can be initiated consciously, positively. Then we work for it forever. It's not like God gave somebody and refused to give somebody. The message is all over. Do good. And do good was given right from the beginning. Do this, don't do this. Even in the Garden of Eden, we were told, do this, don't do this. It is out of that we develop conscience, which guides us. And the conscience is what the God within needs for you to know the difference between good and bad and choose right. That's what Yoga told us. What separates us from the gods is that they know the difference between good and bad. They always stick to what? Good. Unlike us. So eventually that's how it is. They have conscience. That's why we should not mislead ourselves that because we are here, we are better than anybody outside. We are not. But knowing the foundation on which the conscience is built is the key. It's all about spiritual development. We know about the soul body. Somebody has the conscience, can decipher between good and bad and do the right thing. But the person does not have a strong foundation of spiritual knowledge to back what the person knows. So the advantage we have here is that we have spiritual knowledge to to support what we do. So others outside also have conscience. And mind you, conscience is relative. It depends on the individual. It depends on the individual. Somebody might be so hungry and he's so unfully of somebody's pocket. But the person will say, the money is coming, big. Instead of thinking, so God has blessed me, I'm going to buy some food and eat. So that's what I mean by conscience being what? Relative. So he said that in case the boss choose to wear physical body, would they still be right every time? I hope that's your question. This body imposes some limitations on us, not to waste about it. But the boss, they are about this. They cannot take this physical body. Because during their time, when they were also on this journey to become more spiritual, their movement, their evolution, their path towards making themselves better gods did not involve them wearing this physical body. We are the only ones who had the opportunity to wear this physical body. And that's what the teachings why Christ came, so that he knows the challenges we face in dwelling in this physical body. So when he also took the physical body of Jesus, he realized that look, these are the challenges. And it makes it better when he's interceding on our behalf. Before
the tabernacle is a part of attainment.
Yes.
The rose cross is also a part of attainment. Yes. But it depends on your consciousness at that level. At the time that the tabernacle and the wholeness was given, the consciousness was very low.
Yes.
That's why they give them, you have to sacrifice animals, do this, purify yourself, this and all these things. It's the same thing. This day, instead of sacrifice that, you go through remorse, introspection, and all these things. You have to control your desires, your emotions, and all those things. So the path is almost the same, but depending on your consciousness, that is what they give you the particular so that you can. We are all looking for the attainment. Some people were able to use the tabernacle in the wholeness to arrange the attainment. That's why some were priests and high priests and so on. Others too, we have been open to this, and our time is the rose cross that is there. So you also have to pass through the same path to be able to reach the attainment that we are all looking for. But my next question was the temple that we talk of, because we listen for this. The temple, the tabernacle was a temporary dwelling place for the spirit. So the same thing, the cross, which is the human body. This body is also a temporary dwelling place. We are to build a permanent dwelling place, which is the soul body, which we are all struggling to do it, to attain the height at the end of our journey, and then we can live in the etheric region and the rest. So we are temporary dwelling place that they are giving to us that we should use it to help us to develop and then reach our attainment.
I agree with you perfectly. Yeah, but when it comes to the rose cross, if you look at the initiation that is involved, more or less is higher than what the things in the tabernacle in the wilderness. But all of us, somehow individually, we first have to go through the tabernacle in the wilderness, the old tradition. You cannot say you are going to have the first of the four greater initiations straight away. No, you have to go through the 9 Messiah. But the way you go through is what separates today's rose cross from that of the tabernacle in the wilderness. It's not the same.
Yeah, that's what I said. It preceded the rose cross.
Yes.
Depending on the consciousness of the people at that level.
Yes.
Depending on the consciousness, there may be some part of it which is also higher than the rose cross. So this way, this is the preparatory school. There may be secondary school, university school before you reach there.
I agree with you.
So whenever you are reached, that is where you are, and that lesson you take it as the highest.
Of course,
unless you go beyond it.
But there are still some people who are going through initiation unconscious, using the old method. They belong to the old tradition, and we have nothing against that. But when you are on the Christian path, the choice then is to have illusion, conscious. How do we develop intensity? What do you like most? How do we develop that likeness of it? How often do we repeat it? The oftener we repeat it, the more intense it becomes. So to develop intensity, identify what you admire the most. If it's about the tree, why not focus on it every time? See how beautiful the leaves look like. and when it is in season, look at all that. And as you do it regularly, the intensity develops naturally. Yes, young man, to be frank with you, nobody is choosing you when it comes to the Rosicrucian. You are choosing yourself for a certain action, for a certain achievement. I hope that everybody has the free will, except the negative people who temper with your free will. But on the path of the cross and the Rosicrucian, nobody is going to temper with your free will. Maybe give you a certain food for you to be induced. That means the person is tampering with your free will. Here, with your eyes open, your own decision. Once you make that decision, is the exercise of free will. Once you make that decision and you take that action, that I want to go the Christian way, that I want to go beyond orthodox explanation of things, then you are choosing yourself.
What is the question?
But on the way of choosing yourself, there are others who will come and support you. But yes, Tony.
If I understand you, when we are reading the temple service, the Tabernacle, no one point we have said, my father, unless you have been called, maybe 3 of us like to come, and then when you come, you go through the Rosicrucian fellowship. As you have come, you have found a part. No. You will go to here and then you will not even have the satisfaction, and then you go back to the Orthodox Church. So if you have worked for it, then you will find the path and come to the path.
And let me put this in support of what you have said. All that we are doing is the work of the Spirit, not the work of this dance body you see here. So the calling is to the Spirit. The calling is not to this flesh. When the time is due for the Spirit to take an action, it will surely happen. That is what the calling is. And the Father who is responsible for that. So it will ignite a certain feeling, a certain urge, a certain inquiry in the person. That look, there is something beyond usual. Immediately when having that flicker of thought, it means the Spirit is getting awakened. Unlike others, they are there. The Spirit hasn't reached that level to send a message that look, there is something beyond the physical. Go for it. But that doesn't mean once the Spirit ignites it, then automatically you are there. No. Now you begin the spiritual efforts. It takes time. That's what we are doing. It takes time. But we need to proceed. Yes.
Yeah. Alcohol. You mentioned that if you are the fact that you avoid it completely. However, we are also conscious of the fact that alcohol is used in making a lot of the drugs and medicines we take. So does it mean that as an aspirant, you shouldn't go for sex medicines?
Oh, if you are taking medicine, you are taking medicine. Is it not so? And when you are taking alcohol, you know that you are taking alcohol.
My its component is alcohol.
And so you say that alcohol is a medicine.
For example, in the Bible it stated that sometimes when you have tummy trouble, you can take small alcohol.
So it becomes what? Medicine. It becomes medicine. But when you are taking it for the pleasure of intoxication and be yourself, that's out of the way around. You dampen the ability of the Spirit to control and use the body. That is active. Friends, we have come to the end of this lecture. Let's see what comes up another time. And I still say, as the lecturer for today, that there is a difference between this way and that way. Thank you very much. Whether you like it. Kadama, if you are after to place meditation.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see. Whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all this show.